the man of the hour, the Honorable Frank Jackson.
From the shimmering swirl of waters, where many thoughts ago, the slave ship first spotted the square tower of Jamestown. There flowed down to our time 3 streams of thinking, one swollen from the larger overseas and here saying that the multiplying of wars in cultured lands calls for the worldwide unity of men to satisfy those wants, thus forming a new humanity. This larger humanity strives to feel from this contact of living nations and sleeping hordes the thrill of a new life, saying if the contact of life and sleep be death, then shame on such life. But behind that thought lurks an afterthought of force and dominion, the making of black and brown men to delve when the temptation of beads and red calico cloth. The second thought that trickled down to us from the death ship and the curving river is the thoughts of the older South. The older South, which Texas is a part, fervently and passionately believed that somewhere between man and cattle, God created this tertium quid, this intermediate thing, and called it a Negro. A simple, clownish creature, yet lovable within its limitations. But behind that thought was an afterthought, that the older South also knew that perhaps by chance, some of them may become living men and women. Some of them may learn to use their intellects. So out of pure self-defense, they said we dare not let them. So they decided to build around us a wall so wide, a place between us and any knowledge, a veil so thick that we would not even think of breaking through. And the third and the darkest thought that trickled down to us from the death ship were the thoughts of the things themselves. You'd ask the average Negro at the turn of 1903, when Dr. Du Bois first penned this in Souls of Black Folk, say, you'd ask them, say, what do you want? They say, vouchsafe for us, oh boastful world, the chances of living men, freedom, opportunity, equality. He said, but behind that thought also was a dark afterthought, that after all those hundreds of years of bondage, after all those hundreds of years of living behind that veil, even the Negro had come to believe that perhaps the world is right. Perhaps we're not like other men. Perhaps all of this stuff, these mad impulses, are mock mirage from the untrue. This is the tangle of thought and afterthought in which we have to figure out how to train black men and women for the world of work. Good afternoon. First, giving all praises and honor to God, I'm extremely honored and deeply humbled to have been invited to be a part of this great program, and I'm very honored that this chapter would honor yours truly an opportunity to speak to the Prairie View faithful. And I want to acknowledge my wife, Mary Elaine Jones Jackson, a class of '84, and I also want to acknowledge one of my mentors, Dr. Charles Tatum. Dr. Tatum, raise your hand. When we think about our beloved Prairie View, we got to first put it in some kind of perspective. You see, when you come physically to Prairie View, you can't tell Texas history, you can't tell the story unless you include Prairie View. You see, when you're standing in Prairie View, 25 miles to the southwest is San Felipe de Austin, which was Stephen F. Austin's headquarters. If you swung that arc 25 miles to the northwest, you'll be at Old Washington on the Brazos, which is one of the capitals of the Republic of Texas. So we're right in the middle of Texas history. We sit on the easternmost rim of the Brazos River Valley. The first settlers that came into that valley called the Brazos River Valley the arms of God. So Prairie View is nestled on the east arm of God. That says something to some of us here. You know, when Stephen F. Austin first came into Texas, he told the Mexican government, he said he needed the Negro slave in order to make Texas a productive enterprise. He said without the Negro, Texas would fail. The Mexicans reluctantly gave him a concession, him and that scoundrel Baron Bastrop, to bring us in to Texas. As an incentive, Austin told his original 300 settlers, of which they called the Old 300, he said for each Negro you bring into Texas, he would give them an extra 80 acres of land. A rich planter out of Alabama named Jarrett Ellison Gross brought in 110 enslaved African men, women, and children, and he walked them from his far ways plantation in Alabama. He walked them over the east arm of God. He walked them into that Brazos River Valley, and all told, Gross received over 44,000 acres of land. The current town of Hempstead going south belonged to Gross, all the way over to the Brazos River. His son, Leonard Waller Gross, which owned the Leando Plantation, which is 2 miles from Prairie View, he received over 66,000 acres of land. Waller County is named after Gross's nephew, Edwin Waller. Edwin Waller was one of the first to sign the Declaration of Texas Independence, one of the first to sign the Articles of Secession from the Union, and when Texas became a republic, the president of the Republic of Texas, Mardi Lamar, asked Edwin Waller to choose the site for the capital of the republic. Edwin Waller chose the current site of Austin and became the first mayor of Austin. The plantation, which is now Prairie View, was given as a wedding gift to Helen Law Swearingen. Her father was a medical doctor, Dr. Richard Swearingen, over across the Brazos River over in Chapel Hill. And when they got that plantation, all told, between his other farms and other plantations, the Kirbys, Jarrett Ellison Kirby and Helen Marr had over 150 enslaved African men, women, and children on that plantation. And it was against the law to teach us how to read or write. If they caught us reading and writing on Alta Vista, they tie us to a whipping post and beat the hell out of us. So we've only been legally reading and writing since 1865. Do the math. See, that's what Dr. DeVos was talking about, that veil. See, that veil was dropped, and we were so acclimated to walking within that veil, it did a cultural mutation on us. Dr. Woolfolk, in his book entitled Prairie View, A Study in Public Consciousness, he said that political and economic dominance within the arena of national power by any group or groups can lead to a cultural aggression that's designed to alter or reshape the total cultural environment of the vanquished. See, when somebody dominates you politically, when somebody dominates you economically, they can reshape your whole world, and most of us was born into this experience. You see, Prairie View tells the story. Because see, when Texas was pushing for that independence movement, and it was old man Jarrett Ellison Gross that brought Sam Houston into Texas, him and Andrew Jackson. And Sam Houston was over at Gonzales, which is about 18 miles below my hometown of Luling, Texas. I had to slide that in there. But Houston was over at Gonzales, and when the Alamo fell over there at San Antonio, they tell us that all of the men were killed. Well, that's not true. Travis had a slave named Joe. And Joe hid once Travis died. And so when the Mexicans stormed the fort, one of them, the Mexican colonel hollered out, "Are there any Negroes here?" And Joe came out of hiding and said, "Here I is." And one of them tried to stab him with a bayonet, but the colonel blocked it with his saber. He said, "We have no war with the Negro. You free to go." Joe walked out of the Alamo, took Mrs. Dickinson and the rest of the women down to Gonzales, brought them over below Hempstead at a place they called Gross's Ferry. They crossed the ferry, they burned the ferry, and it was those blacks there at Gross's place that helped Sam Houston get his horses refreshed, put shoes on them, helped them make ammunition, and made Santa Ana go around the Brazos, and they caught him over there at San Jacinto. So we've been in this thing for a minute. You see, when Texas decided it was going to join the Civil War, Edwin Waller and all them boys separation from the Union, there were 3 Confederate camps around Prairie View: Camp Carter, Camp Gross, and Camp Abear. We have the diary from Camp Gross, where they kept Union prisoner of war criminals, and they also talked about how some of the Negroes used to escape off those plantations, and they let the dogs go run them down and tree them, and then let the dogs tear them loose. See, we have those notes from those diaries. And so when the Confederacy came, the reason they set up around Hempstead, because when old man Gross died, his son, George Ellison Gross III, inherited the larger portion of his holdings. They called it Pleasant Hill. Then he died. And then there was a medical doctor named R.R. Peebles who made his money servicing those plantations in that Brazos River Valley. So he got with another slave owner named MacDade. They bought the railroad franchise from Cypress City and built it through Prairie View down to Hempstead, chartered the town of Hempstead in 1856, and it became a railhead town for shipping that cotton out of the Brazos River Valley. So if you go to the Federal Reserve Bank there in Houston, they got a beautiful glass etching that shows the train, which is the logo on Houston's seal that comes at those tracks start down in the Brazos River Valley, because it was that cotton that we were producing that produced Houston, gave them their economic boost because they were shipping to Houston down to Galveston and ship it out. We were making Texas a productive enterprise. You see, when that war started to wind down, the Civil War, we all celebrate Juneteenth as the day the Union General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston Island on June 19th and read General Order No. 3 in the Emancipation Proclamation. But word did not get up to the Brazos River Valley till August the 25th, when General George Armstrong Custer and several thousand cavalry troops rode into Hempstead. And the question is, why did he come to Hempstead? Because as the war was winding down, all of the Confederate generals were coming into Texas, and they was waiting on Jefferson Davis to meet them there, because there was a 3-star Confederate general named Edmund Kirby Smith who was in charge of all of the Confederate troops west of the Mississippi River. They called it the Trans-Mississippi Command. During the final phases of the Civil War, his headquarters was at his cousin's plantation called Alta Vista, and they was coming to Prairie View. The last major Confederate command was at Prairie View. I'm gonna let that soak in for a minute. And Custer came there trying to catch Kirby Smith, who hightailed it into Mexico with the governor, and the governor died, Mara died, never came back out. He said, why did you say that? Because Texas never got it in their cultural memory that they lost the war. You see, after the war, the question became, what do you now do with all these newly freed people? What do you do with them? You kept them in legal ignorance. You kept them behind that veil. They had no recollection of who they were. We had lost our historical memory. Most of us came from West Africa. We were Ibu, Fulani, Ashanti, Hausa, Yoruba, Mandinka people. Those were some of our names. All of that had been wiped from our minds. We had gods, Odulamare, and Viliunge, Ogun. All of this had been wiped from our minds. I'm speaking to you in English. I am not an English man. They changed our culture. They changed our history. They changed our memory. So the question became, do you help them recover their memory? What do you do with them? So the northern businessmen, led by George Foster Peabody, William H. Baldwin, these railroad tycoons, barons of Wall Street, they got intellectuals like Barnard Sears, the past president of Brown University, and they got together with the southern plantation owners and the southern intellectuals, and the whole purpose of their conferences is what we're going to do about the Negro. That's what Woodfall documented, the whole saga of how they came together. He was saying, how was our cultural consciousness shaped? And the idea became, how do you raise us up from being slaves to wage earners? See, as long as you're a wage earner, you're one level above a slave. Lose your job. See, the idea was not to create deep thinkers. The idea was not to create intellectuals. The idea was to create workers, so they got together at Hampton University and started to experiment. Booker T. Washington was trained at Hampton. Then he he set up Tuskegee. If you look at his board of directors at Tuskegee, call their names: William H. Spalding, George Foster Peabody. Just go down the list of the northern businessmen. The experiment here in Texas was Prairie View. This was an experiment. That's Frank Jackson. Y'all tell him whoever you want to tell. Because they had to pick a commission. See, prior to this constitutional amendment in 1876, the northern businessmen first gave black men the right to vote. Because the Southerners, once they lost the war and they started retreating, they went back to business as usual. They thought, okay, it's over, we're going to start over. They said, no, baby. You got to pay for this. Lincoln had a plan for their behind. But they killed Lincoln. Johnson let them get away with it. And so they're going to go back to business as usual. And so the federal government stepped in and said, no, we're going to give black men the power to vote. See, there in that Brazos River Valley, about 15 miles from Prairie View on the Mount Zion Sunnyside plantation, a black man was born by the name of Norris Wright Cuney. Norris Wright Cuney's father was the white plantation owner Philip Cuney. His mother was Adeline Stewart. There's still some Stewarts stay in Mount Zion. That's right across the river from San Felipe de Austin. Cuney's father was so enamored with his mother that he was married twice, but he kept his slave mistress and had several girls and boys by him. She convinced him to send the girls back to France to study. There's no record of them returning, but she convinced him to send the boys back to Pittsburgh to the Wild Street School for Negroes. And after the war, this young mulatto, Norris Wright, came back into Texas, but he took a page out of his father's book because Philip Cuney was a member of the Texas Masonic Lodge, and he was also a state senator, and he was also a part of the Congress of Texas. So Norris Wright Cuney came back. He ran into a black man out of Kansas named William D. Matthews, who had fought the Confederates up in the Indian Territory. He made Norris Wright his deputy grandmaster. Eventually, Norris Wright became the first grandmaster of Prince Hall Masons in Texas. And Norris Wright used those Masonic lodges in San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Galveston, and Chapel Hill to build a political power base. So during that Reconstruction era, we had black state representatives out of Hempstead and Prairie View and all up and down that valley. We had 2 black state senators. We only got 2 now, by the way. We got Rodney Ellis here in Houston and Royce West in Dallas. Back during Reconstruction, you had Walter Burton from Waller and Fort Bend County, had Matthew Gaines from across the river in Washington County, and we were Republicans then.
Yeah.
Oh. The Democrats were our enemy. And Cuney rose to such prominence and power so quick, he became the head of the Republican Party in Texas. And blacks started opening up business. We were buying farms. We were investing in our children. One of the first things these folks did when they got to Austin is push for a public education system, because there was no such thing as a public education system in Texas. So any of us that went to a public school have owed a debt of gratitude to these Reconstruction era legislators. And then go find a marker to them. Go find a monument to them. It's like it didn't even exist. But these men did it so quick that the old guard Democrats said, my Lord, we just turn them loose. Look at what they're doing. If we don't put this Negro in check, what we feared will come to pass. So the mantra became get Cuney. And they finally got Cuney and refused to see this delegation. And once Richard Koch and all those boys started hijacking the state government, they went after Edmund J. Davis, who was the provisional governor of Texas. He wrote to Ulysses S. Grant because he said they're getting ready to hijack Texas. He said, I can't help you. Grant refused to come. But one of those black militias from out of San Antonio came up to Austin. The Confederates were charging the state capitol, going to get the governor out and go hanging. They went through the second floor window, rescued the governor, and took him to safety. We had black militia and black police forces out here. They had to dismantle all of those. So once the Confederates, the Democrats had cut a deal with the lily white Republicans to get Cuney and those boys out of office, they started passing state laws called the Black Codes. Go to the back door. Back back of the train. We remember those, don't we? See, this was part of a process. Separate but unequal. Y'all go to the Negro schools. Remember that? This was all as a result of getting CUNY. Because CUNY them had moved so swift. They had their grand secretary, William Bill Gooseneck MacDonald, had opened up the Fraternal Bank and Trust up in Fort Worth. And he kept that thing going even through the Depression. He loaned the banks up in Fort Worth money. This is the power that we had coming out of that war. But at Prairie View, when they had to go back to the federal government and say, we want to take advantage of that Land Grant College Act. And because before the war, Jefferson Davis and them boys claimed states' rights. They didn't want nothing to do with it. They didn't want the federal government dipping in their business. Sound familiar, though? But after the war, they had to take it. And so they created those two schools. They created A&M College, and then the governor, Richard Cope, appointed a commission to figure out where to locate that colored college that was spoken of in that Constitution. And they came there to Alta Vista, to Edwin Waller. Edwin Waller got the hook up, and they came to his cousin's plantation. And they bought that plantation. Mrs. Kirby moved to Austin. And when they opened up the University of Texas, she became the first dean of women at the University of Texas. And they turned the keys to the plantation over to Edward Waller. And the governor of Texas wrote Jefferson Davis and invited him to come into Texas and be the first president of both Texas A&M and Prairie View. Let that soak in. Jefferson Davis said, I'm busy, I respectfully decline. He said, but I'm going to send you a man out of Mississippi. He sent Thomas H. Garthright, who was the past Grand Master of the Masonic Lodge of Mississippi, and he told him to bring a colored man in to be the principal out at Prairie View, and he brought L.W. Minor. That's L.W. Minor Street that runs in front of the administration building and the student center. Both L.W. Minor and Thomas Garthright came on the recommendation of Jefferson Davis. When Mr. Minor left, he was followed by the Anderson brothers. L.C. followed his brother E.H. who had died. L.C. went to Austin to get books for the kids. When he came back, all his belongings were sitting out on the side of the road. He was followed by Edward Lavoisier Blackshear, Big Red. Blackshear brought in Booker T. Washington to be the graduation speaker. So he was still giving out certificates. He tried to introduce a college curriculum because the kids just coming out of that condition of slavery, some of them were still barely making X's. But he tried anyway. So when I talked to the kids at Prairie View, and I said, many of y'all coming to school in 2014 then, I said, if you're taking any remedial courses, we've been at this for a minute. And folks said, well, why we need a Prairie View? Because Prairie View's one said, that's all right, baby. I got you. Because we always operate a little bit below the radar. And we see that little sharp black boy and black and say, you come here. And you gonna come over here, I got you. So that's what the Tatums used to do in the Wolf office. You come in. You get it, you need to be in biology, you need to be in math, you need to be over here. Some of the rest of it, let us go out there in the shop and learn how to weld and cut wood. We've been doing that for a long time. Each time one of our leaders raised us up, it seemed like somebody got it. They got Blackshear. He was followed by I Am Terror. They named schools after these men. You go to Austin, Houston, San Antonio. These were the giants in that time. I Am Terror, Fort Worth. He was followed by J.G. Osborne, medical doctor. J.G. was fortunate enough that Terrell had hired Edward Bertrand Evans. Dr. Evans came in as a veterinarian, the first black in Texas to pass a state exam for licensing as a veterinarian. And he was also very instrumental in working with J.G. Osborne to start the Old Negro Interscholastic League. They kicked off and got the Army ROTC at Prairie View. They went a step further. They phased out the old normal school and got us our first baccalaureate program, which was the College of Nursing. They went a step further and they started the SWAC, the Southwest Athletic Conference. Prairie View is the granddaddy of the SWAC. We were the first, last one standing of the original members. Y'all need to give credit. It was JG and E.B. Evans. And so JG was pushing us so fast and so quick, they got JG. He was followed by Willard Rutherford Banks. Banks was a student of DuBose. Banks came in and just picked up where JG had left off. He got our graduate school raised up. He got us accredited for the first time in our history. And it didn't take long. They asked Professor Banks to come. Let's go to the house. But see, another movement was afoot with that Heman Sweat case. And eventually, Dr. Evans was brought up as the principal. And once they brought Texas Southern online, even Banks was involved in that movement. E.B. Evans, eventually, they made him a dean and then they made him president. But Evans didn't stop. He kept pushing Prairie View because he had caught the vision of Prairie View. And he was starting to move us into the international arena. He got us in Liberia, where we was taking our ag and industrial education folks over in Liberia and helping grow their economy and helping people have clean water and decent homes. And as he moved forward, he got tired, and Dr. Evans was getting ready to resign or to retire, and they got J.M. Drew, but he got sick. So Evans came back, and he recommended Dr. Alvin I. Thomas, somebody that he was very impressed with. He had helped Thomas go away and get his PhD, and when AI came back, he recommended him for the presidency of Prairie View, and it was AI that put words to the vision that said Prairie View produces productive people. That's a vision statement. Now what does that mean? See, AI was one of those that dreamed big. We didn't catch AI's vision at first, because sometimes AI sounds both Jesus Christ and the devil. Which one you want? Some of y'all been around there, know what I'm talking about. See, AI was a shrewd individual. You loved him or hated him. Take your choice. But AI picked up on what Evans had showed him. See, because Evans, having worked with J.G. Osborne to start that Army OTC, was instrumental in getting commissions in the United States Army for these guys right after the World War II. So AI played that north-south pivot that W.R. Banks had played, that Evans had played, that they had picked up on, going all the way back to Minor, and he went and got with George Herbert Walker Bush. And they created that Naval ROTC program. The first at an HBCU in the nation, and at one time Prairie View was producing more black naval officers than any other source outside of the U.S. Navy. But that was part of a vision. See, AI used to take us over to his house and teach us how to eat. Because kids like me coming out of Luling, Texas, we didn't ever sit down at the farm and say, we ate out the pot. Some of y'all did that. You ate out the pot. You go get your stuff, go sit in front of TV, then you off in the projects and the streets. We're doing the work. So he had to show us how to use our knives and forks and not to click the side of the glass when we stir our tea. AI made us read the Wall Street Journal. He made us read the New York Times bestsellers list. He made us learn how to play chess. He kept dialogue with us. So when we got commissioned and went to those wardrooms where we ate like this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner on china and silverware and crystal, we weren't worried about the social graces. We was engaged in the conversation around the table. And we said, oh yeah, look at you, boy. You got us ready. But the vision was deeper than that. See, it inspired us in different ways. See, I was one of those young brothers once supposed to be in college. Supposed to go to trade school, but my daddy couldn't afford trade school. But my mama called her sister, who's in this audience now. Raise your hand, man. And her sister knew Miss Irma Williams, and Miss Irma Williams said she knew somebody at Prairie View that could get me in school 2 weeks before school started. That's the first time I found out we were poor. Because I always had a nice suit for Sunday school and church, a decent pair of shoes. I always ate post toasters and oatmeal for supper. I thought everybody ate syrup sandwiches. I went to financial aid, they told me I qualified for everything. But because I had an opportunity to be in the Navy, I had a chance to sail more than 7 seas. Travel all over this planet, look at cultures, because of men like Tatum told me, Frank Jackson, you need to need to read about the Japanese. You need to read about these folks in Italy. You need to understand. So when we went to these countries, I would read up on them and understand their cultural behavior. And help me understand us better. So when the Navy sent me back to Prairie View to teach navigation and ship handling, I didn't leave. I stayed there and went to work. I had the vision. Now what is that vision? My interpretation. You interpret it the way you want to do it. I don't believe in accidents no more. I'm too old. I'm 63 years old, so I'm a senior citizen. I don't believe in accidents. It's no accident that I'm standing up here now. Because I'm talking to somebody. I don't know who you are. I'm talking to somebody. As a mayor of the city of Prairie View, I've been on the city council, I've been a county commissioner, been a fire chief, and I've been mayor. And I received a phone call from the National Conference of Black Mayors. They said, Mayor Jackson, do you want to go to Africa, to Senegal? I said, yeah. I said, but hell, I can't afford to go to Africa. Shit. I said, excuse me, y'all, it just came. So they said, Mayor Jackson, if you can get to New York, we got you. And I said, okay. So I got to New York, and we went to an air base. And they had Dr. Leonard Jeffries and a couple more black scholars and intellectuals and other black mayors, Mayor from Tuskegee was with us. And we didn't go through any baggage checks or anything. We just walked and got on the plane like we used to. And it was the president's plane from Senegal. He had sent his private plane. So you know I was messed up. Y'all know that. We got to Senegal. They took us to this 5-star hotel. And I was just blown away. It was beautiful. I mean, there was squalor all around. There was people living in huts and everything, but we was in this 5-star hotel right there on the water, beautiful. When we went to the auditorium, it was a big auditorium that was tiered, and we all had headphones on. They had interpreters, so they had mayors there from all the Francophone countries, Mali, from Guinea-Bissau, all through there. They had it from Ghana. They had us there from Haiti. They had us there from Mexico. They had black mayors there from Ecuador, Chile, Colombia, Brazil. For all over the diaspora, they had us there. And we were sitting there with headphones on. For the first time, we could understand each other. Whether you spoke Spanish, French, Portuguese, or West African dialect, we could understand them. And so one of the mayors from Mali stood up and started telling the story of his city and the struggles they're going through. And the mayor from Tuskegee stood up and said, Frank, he's talking about Tuskegee. I said, no, he's talking about Prairie View. And it dawned on us, wherever you go in the diaspora, we're all suffering the same thing. When you come to Prairie View, you say, man, the university is beautiful. But did you see a bank? You didn't see no grocery store, no bookstore. Not like you see around U of H or A&M. Oh, we have one of the largest economies in the county. Oh, you don't think folks been trying? Oh, you go to Grambling, same thing. Go to Tuskegee, just go down the line. But when we was there, the president of Senegal came in. He said, how many of y'all haven't been to Gras Island? I raised my hand. So he sent us out on his yacht. And we got this tour from the mayor of Gras Island, and we went into this slave castle. And they put us in this cell where they said they would pack 100 men naked, just push you in there. They had the children in the cell next door, and they had the women outside so that the slave masters could have their way with them. And when they shut the door and we were standing there in the dark, I started to cry. Because I could imagine my boys being next door calling my name. And I'm standing there helpless, can't do nothing. I can imagine my wife being misused by them, and I'm standing there helpless, couldn't do nothing. And so when they took us out, they took us through that door of no return. And we went back to the hotel. The president said, when we went through that door, he said, you were in the DNA of those folks that went through that door. He said, you were in the loins of those people. He said, you lost your historical memory. He said, they packed you on those slave ships. You suffered on them. Many of you died. And nothing but the strong made it through. He said, and they took you to the slave plantation and put you up on auction blocks, naked to the world, snatched your babies out of your arms, sold them to the highest bidder, just brutalized you in all kind of ways, made us less than human beings. He said, but I sent for you. And y'all came back first class, didn't you? He said, now it's time to go to work. He said, on my watch, I want to start it. So that caught fire. So last year we went to Colombia. The president of Colombia sent for us. Paid our way up, everything to go there. And just by chance at Prairie View, we've been building sister city relationships with other cities in the diaspora. And I had a sister city relationship with a city in Colombia, Washington. It's a city of 25,000 Afro-Colombians. And their mayor Francisco Paz Zapata, had been to Prairie View, and we signed an articulation agreement and a sister city agreement. So when I was in Cartagena, he came up to Cartagena and paid my way down to Cali, picked me up in Cali, and drove me to his city 30 miles from Cali, and we went 30 miles through sugar cane. I had never seen so much sugar cane in my life. When we got there, we stopped outside of his city, and there was police there in military fatigues and automatic rifles. He said, come on, Mayor Jackson, let's walk. I saw them police, I said, Lord. I said, okay. And when we walked through his town, I saw the people start coming out. It was a parade. I said, wait a minute, Mayor Paz. I said, who's this parade for? He said, it's for you. I said, wait a minute, you been to Prairie View? You know, I didn't bring you nothing. I didn't bring you no computers. I didn't bring nothing. He said, He said, you don't understand. He said, to my people, he said, you're a black mayor. You're from the United States. Y'all going through trials and tribulations. Y'all lifted yourself up. He said, to my people, you represent hope. Y'all know I'm crying. And as we walked, I saw the buildings crumbling. We went to the school, they had 35 computers for thousands of kids. They had more books probably in the library, this power center than they had in the whole school. And those kids were just excited. Hundreds of them. Just crowding around just like you're a rock star or something. He said, Mayor Jackson, they look for y'all to come and help us with the technology so that we can take this sugarcane leaves and make biofuels out of it. When I went to Punta Gorda, Belize, and was sitting on the porch with the mayor of Punta Gorda there in Belize, right next to Mexico, he said, Mayor Jackson, he said, can your engineers there at Prairie View come here and help us take the noni berries and the mangoes that are just rotting on the ground, just drying up, and all the bananas we got to throw away, help us to get a technology to dry these bananas and package them so we can ship them out so we can get money so our kids can go to school, because our kids can't even go to school because they don't even have pencils. When I was in Mexico, went to Pueblo de Ortega, Mexico, same story. While I was in Senegal, the kids there said, Mayor Jackson said, we study in France, but when we come home, we go out to our village and we show our people how to start gardens, and we take the vegetables from those gardens, sell them in the market, use the money to buy solar panels for the lights so the kids will have lights, and we buy those little laptop computers for them. He said, but we also take the juice from the baobab tree, and we send that juice to France to be bottled, and we sell it to make more money so we can buy books and supplies for our kids. He said, can the engineers at Prairie View help us develop a technology where we can bottle this juice and we can ship it to those kids at Prairie View, and they can get a product that they have and ship it to us, and we can start a trade system, and we can keep notes on what it costs to move these products back and forth, and we can start our own distribution system. And I started to cry because those kids had the vision. They showed us how to do it. They understood what it would take to lift up our people that have been held down since we first got enslaved. We just recreate the same triangle trade system that got us over here. Prairie View produces productive people. Why not invest in that? I had another fortune. I'm gonna wrap this thing up because I know y'all got other things to do. But I was invited. No, I wasn't invited. I take that back. I found out that the White House initiative on HBCUs and the United Negro College Fund was sending a bunch of us from these HBCUs out to Stanford University. and they wanted us to see how Stanford University was using innovation to create these new technologies and create wealth with their kids. And so I found out about it and I went. I invited myself. Their trip was paid for by the Koch brothers. Oh. But they treated us with distinction and dignity. And so when I was sitting there listening to those black kids coming there from Stanford, and they were standing there talking about, well, you know, I came here to Stanford from New York, and I like tennis shoes, and so Stanford helped me to develop an app where I can go and put that on the web, and kids can come in, they can design their own tennis shoes, and then I needed somebody to produce that tennis shoe. So when I went back to my freshman dorm, they told me that Charlie down the hall was in the crowdfunding, and he could help me get crowdfunding and other venture capitalists so I could produce this tennis shoe. And I was sitting there with my mouth hung up. I said, these are freshmen talking about funding and production. And I said, now what are our kids talking about at Prairie? Kickback, next party. Come on. Come on, let's be real. What if we get our stuff together? Because see, some of us in my age, I know we just about out of here. So we don't have time to be playing with this thing no more. What if we encourage this production? See, one of Dr. Wright's agenda items in this next legislative session, which is now convening, is to build an innovation center. So they can take the research that's being done in those laboratories and take it out here and bring in entrepreneurs to start developing these products. But we're going to need angel capital to come in there and help get these entrepreneurs started up and get those businesses launched. And we can take that same railroad that was built with slave labor, ship that stuff down to Galveston, put on those ships that's being manned by Prairie View naval captains and Prairie View naval commanders. They can move their stuff around this planet, because many of them now are retired. You had an admiral up here, David Brewer, 3 stars. You don't think Brewer can help us with logistics? You don't think some of them retired generals and colonels can't work out how to distribute this stuff? What are we waiting on? It's time now. That was the vision. That was what it meant by Prairie View produces productive people. We got to become producers instead of consumers. If I go to my seat now, I was in Ghana in November. I was invited by the mayor of Ghana, Accra, Ghana, to help plan the next time we're going to meet with the mayors and leaders of African descent in our alliance. And we're going to meet in Cote d'Ivoire, West Africa, here in June. And while I was there, I was very impressed with the Ghanaians because everybody was selling everything. They were selling bottled water, they were selling bags and hand sanitizer, everything on their head. Everybody selling because they don't have a welfare system as we know it. And so one of the state representatives from North Carolina was standing there with me. I said, man, I really admire the Ghanaians because everybody's entrepreneur, everybody's selling. He said, Frank, he said, when is the last time we went to a manufacturing plant here in Ghana? I said, no, we haven't been to one. So I pulled the mayor's chief of staff over. I said, Thomas, I said, where are these people getting all these products they selling? They selling everywhere. He said, they're getting it from the Chinese. He said, they bring it in by the shipload. And they go down to the pier, they get it, they put it on their head, and they selling it to their people. They peddling just like boys slinging their packets on the corner. They're consumers too. It's all over the diaspora. As I sit down and tell you this story, I say I wasn't going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you. It's that old story of the eagle and the chicken. Got to tell you. You know, eagles live high in the mountains. And one day the mother eagle went out to get some food for her little eaglet. But while she was gone, one of them fell out of the nest and fell on the ground. And a farmer was passing by and stopped and picked up the little eagle and took it home and put it in the coop with the chickens. So the little eagle grew up thinking that it was a chicken. And so when the other little eaglets got large enough, their mother sent them out to look for their lost brother. And one of them was flying over the chicken coop. And he spotted his little brother. And he swooped down and said, hey man, mama and them been looking for you. What you doing down here with these chickens? He said, well, I'm a chicken. He said, oh man, you're not no chicken. He said, look at your feet. He said, Lord, I can't look at my feet. My feet are ugly. He said, brother, you don't have them little chicken feet to be scratching on the ground. He said, you have the talons of a mighty hunter. He said, brother, look at your beak. He said, oh, I can't look at my beak. My beak is ugly. He said, brother, your beak wasn't designed by God to peck on the ground for worms. You had a beak designed by God to tear flesh from bone. He said, look at your wings. He said, oh, Lord, I can't look at my wings. Every time I open up my wings, these other chickens get to clucking and hollering, running all over. But he stayed there and he helped him recover his historical memory. He told him about his people high up in the mountains. He told him about their history. He recovered his memory. And he convinced them to open up his wings so when the chickens got to holler, he said, don't worry about them chickens, let them holler. And so when his little brother opened them up, it felt good. He said, let's fly to that fish post, little brother. And when they got there, he said, don't stop there, little brother, let's fly to that treetop. When they got there, he said, don't stop there, little brother, let's keep going higher and higher into the heavens. And a veil was lifted. And he came to himself. And he realized that he wasn't a chicken. He was an eagle. See, I stopped by to tell you that your people came out of them high mountains of Ethiopia thousands of years ago. We are an old people. We've been here. We taught folks how to read and write. We brought in mathematics and medicine. We rode with all of them boys, the Persians, the Macedonians. We rode with the Muslims across North Africa. We built libraries and empires, but we lost our memory. We're certainly not that in-rank word. We can do anything we want to do. All we got to do is spread our wings and fly. God